In the early 1500s, in a world shaped by death and the devil, a man emerges who will change everything. Martin Luther. The main item on his agenda, to free himself and his fellows from fear. The age is overflowing with fear, famine, plague, war and violence. There is reason enough to be afraid. Even of Christ, regarded as the judge of the world who decides after death who will enter heaven and who is doomed to hell. It is a bleak worldview, and the church plays its part, convincing people of their appalling sin. All see themselves as sinners, trembling in fear for their soul's salvation. All are tormented by guilt, all dread burning in hell after death. But something is not quite right with the church's explanations. Everyone can sense it. The church dignitaries live on the fat of the land, while they preach humility and modesty. And the thing with the indulgences, the church's incredibly profitable business model. Redemption from sin can be bought for cash. The church uses this revenue to finance pomp and splendor, and even war. Ever more people are beginning to doubt that such is the will of God. And Martin Luther is one of them. Theology professor in Wittenberg, he is tormented by the question how to attain God's mercy, just with money, or indeed repentance. What must a good Christian do to avoid going to hell? At some point he comes to the key liberating realization: only faith matters and the grace of God. Man must do nothing other than believe. That's all. Hell loses its terror, and Luther becomes the world-changing reformer. In 95 Theses, he criticizes the church and most of all its shady selling of indulgences, thus beginning the Reformation of 1517. Luther does not seek to divide the Catholic Church, at least not yet. He seeks to reform it, and soon he takes an even harsher stand against his church, determined to shake it up properly. On the one hand, he sees all the priests, monks and nuns whose supposed purpose is to mediate between God and man. Away with them, cries Luther. He proclaims the universal priesthood. Every Christian, he declares, can speak directly to God and be answered. Then the worship of the saints, the reliquaries, the pilgrimages, all the extravagant churchly customs. Away with them, cries Luther. For there is no word of them in the Bible, and ultimately that's all that counts. And the Pope, who sees himself as the vicar of Christ, what arrogance! Away with him, cries Luther, and becomes even more extreme in his censure. The Pope is a devil, the Antichrist, evil incarnate. Restraint is not Martin Luther's stock in trade. He rages and curses just as resolutely as he argues, and all shall know. For that, he relies on the printers and their new technology. Book printing is a revolution. Before, everything had to be laboriously copied by hand. Now, the printing press enables huge print runs. The reformer ignites a sheer propaganda battle. Messengers and booksellers circulate his tracts and pamphlets. The readers can't get enough of them. His opponents keep pace, portraying Luther as a monster, controlled by the devil. The Reformation becomes the world's first media event. Martin Luther's major theological arena is the church pulpit. He seeks to convince the people with his sermons, and for that, he conducts church service in German, not Latin. Religious rituals lose their significance. The congregation shall listen, consider, and participate. For this, Luther composes the first church hymns, giving the congregation its own voice. Luther the pastor, however, is unable to convince everyone. On the contrary, the dispute with his opponents within the church becomes ever more intense. In some places, his manuscripts are burned. The Pope threatens him with excommunication. For him, the man from Wittenberg is a heretic who must be forced to recant. In the worst case, Luther could even end up at the stake, as did Jan Hus, an early reformer. The emperor, too, fears that Luther could destroy the entire Christian order. In 1521, he summons the intractable theology professor to the imperial diet in Worms, where Luther is to recant. But he refuses to do so. Now Luther's life is in the utmost danger. He must take flight. The emperor proclaims the Edict of Worms. Luther may now be arrested or even killed by anyone. But the reformer has powerful protectors. Above all, his own sovereign lord, the Elector of Saxony, who has his renowned professor hidden away in the Wartburg castle. There, disguised as Junker Jörg, Luther begins a further project, the translation of the Bible into German. Hitherto only in Latin, Luther wants everyone to be able to understand it. And for this, he even conceives new German words like Nächstenliebe, charity. His translation of the Bible is a milestone on the path towards a unified German language. With the Reformation, a new religious denomination is born, the Evangelical Church, so called because it refers to the Gospels, in German Evangelien, from the New Testament. Luther's new doctrine wins him many followers among the people, but also among their rulers. Some of them protest against Luther's condemnation. The latter term, Protestant, owes its origin to this protestatio. In 1530, at the Imperial Diet in Augsburg, they present Charles V with what is still today the central creed or confession of evangelical Christians, the Confessio Augustana. Intended as a basis for discussion, the position between the religions is so diametrically opposed, however, that the schism of the Church is inevitable. The new faith becomes ever more widespread. Many sovereigns and kings convert to it. Their subjects must mostly follow. The Reformation has many clever brains at the top. Martin Luther is the most prominent, but other reformers are quick to join the fray, some with quite different perspectives. Particularly important are Ulrich Zwingli in Zurich and Johannes Calvin in Geneva. Yet the Reformation provokes more than just religious hope. Many believe that it can also make daily life more equitable. After all, Luther did propagate the freedom of a Christian. Thus, in 1525, the peasants make a stand against the oppressive rule of the nobility and clergy, believing the reformer to be on their side. But the peasants are mistaken. The mighty are better armed and not prepared to allow any shake-up to the social order. Martin Luther is on their side. He turns harshly against the insurgents, against the murderous, robbing hordes of peasants, he writes, demanding their slaughter. Luther wants a religious renewal, not social upheaval. The Peasants' War turns into a massacre of the rural population. In praise of God, Luther is merciless. Likewise, when it comes to the Jews, when they adamantly refuse to be converted, he pens an inflammatory text against them, quite in keeping with the anti-Semitic spirit of the age. Martin Luther has many faces. He stands for a long overdue modernization of the Church, but also for its division. His works demand independent thought, but also religious zeal. He has always rejected violence in the name of faith, yet the conflict between Protestants and Catholics will lead to exactly that. An era of bloody religious wars begins shortly after his death in 1546.